All right, let's go over the footwork on the chair. Now, this might be an example of where you have an exercise that is a little bit of a compromise. Now, look at it this way. If you're doing Joe Pilates work, you start on the reformer with footwork, right? So let's take it in that mentality. Think of yourself as, I want to construct a class for either myself or for my client where I'm going to follow fairly closely what you would do during a typical Pilates workout. So you start with footwork on the reformer. Let's start with footwork on the chair. So Natalie, who's a Pilates instructor, is my body and my model here, and she's going to be set up for footwork. Couple of things you need to know about the setup here. So note right here where you sit. I've deliberately set Natalie up a little bit too far back. So, and this has some implications. So I want you to see this. So now, if anything, come back a little bit further. I've got my hand right back here just so I don't want her to accidentally fall backwards. If Natalie pushes down on the pedal, because she's so far back, watch what happens to her thighs. Her thighs will just hit this seat and it will really restrict her range of motion. So it's not like she can't get any range of motion, but right here as you come down, it's going to feel unsatisfying, and also it will not give her the results that we're looking for. So the first thing is I want to set her up so that she's got the best chance of success. So come on forward, and I want you to sit right here at the front edge of your seat. Now, you may want to make some type of kind of equation or some like a little memory trick. Maybe you put your sit bones like one hand span away from the front edge of your seat, or something that makes sense to your client. So if you tell them, hey, sit like 2 inches away from the front edge of your seat, that might work. Okay, then notice that she's already set up beautifully with her hands holding on to the front edge of the seat. Now, depending on how your client prefers this, you may want to have the hands this direction like she has with the palms facing backwards, or you may want to put the hands off to the side. Important thing is that they have some type of kinesthetic feedback just to start with so that she knows where she is in space. The more places that your client touches on the chair, the better off she's going to be, at least at the beginning. Now remember, right here is completely free floating. You think about when you're working on the reformer, you have things like isolation, leverage, and risk. Meaning, if you're lying completely flat on your back on the reformer, you don't have that much risk because you're lying down there, all right? Here, there is a chance that your client could, they lose their focus and they get flung upwards by this pedal and they may tumble backwards. So therefore, you have to instill in them the fact that, hey, you've got to pay attention here, and having the hands holding on to the sides is going to give them a little bit of feedback. The other thing is, you as a teacher, if you're working with somebody in a private setting, you may want to hover nearby, not so that you're too close in their personal space, but enough that you could, if you see them start to go over, you reach back and are able to spot them. Okay, so you have this feedback, hands somehow holding on. I'm going to let Natalie choose whether she wants her hands off the side or on the front. One little advantage of having your hands on the front of the seat is that if you push back, you can get this beautiful opening of the chest, and you have this the lats being turned on, because the lats are a humeral internal rotator. So I'll just let her choose that. Now, once you've done this, you want to take a look at your client and make sure that their back is straight up and down. I'll say things such as, pretend you've got a stack of champagne flutes all the way up and down, or maybe there's a wall with wet paint on it and you don't want to slump back and touch that wall. And so once you have this perfect posture. Now realize it's going to be different than lying on the reformer because the body can freely move. I'm going to talk more to that. So have your client pick, or you as a teacher pick a foot position. Let's go parallel feet. Heels are on the pedal. I have 2 springs on this particular model of balanced body chair on the number 2 setting, which gives a nice medium amount of resistance. So please press down and let it come back up. Now the question immediately arises, what's their experience going to be? One important thing, anytime you're working with things that have such small margin for error, give your client permission to move where their feet are. Notice that when her feet are up here at the top, it may feel wonderful, but the moment she starts pushing down, it changes exactly what direction that she's experiencing that. So feel free to give your client permission to move where her feet are. Because honestly, the range of motion here, how about this? Just come up right about there and come on back down. That might be your preferred range of motion. Now here's what I would recommend. Natalie, I would like for you to keep your pelvis absolutely still. And while keeping your pelvis absolutely still, move your pedal as much as you can. So I've given her criteria in order to be the captain of her own experience here. So what that means is, if this exercise is a little bit on the difficult side for her and she's having trouble keeping her pelvis still, then she just moves the pedal just a little bit. However, if she's strong, which I know she is, she can move the pedal way. Look at this, that's pretty high. Now, how high do you go? How low do you go? I would recommend you only go as low as far as you can without just barely touching the pedal. I know she's strong enough, she can bury this pedal, so try that, just slap it down. That right there, you do not want to do, only because people will often just slam that pedal down to the ground and bounce off of that. That's counterproductive. So if anything, make it a challenge for you to just go down and go as close as you can without slapping the frame. You pretend there's a blueberry down there and you don't want to crush the blueberry. Okay, now that they have that going on, you as the instructor, or if you're doing this by yourself at home and you've got a mirror, you might want to look visually and make sure that the spine and the pelvis is not getting disrupted. Now, what happens if you are a Pilates practitioner by yourself and you're working out at home? Pause for 1 second. You can use your own hands as a kinesthetic reference point. And there's a couple of things you can do in order to make this happen. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So you might want to place your hands right here at your waist, like suppose like your grandmother's mad at you and you're like doing one of these. Your hands are extraordinarily sensitive. So therefore, even if you can't feel that your pelvis is moving, by placing your very sensitive hands right here at your waist, you can get the feedback you need to see or feel if you are moving your pelvis. So I'm going to have Natalie, tell you what, Natalie, why don't you change your foot position to something else? How about toes on the bar? So place your hands on the seat and then change your position just because it's safer that way. And then once you're in that position, press the pedal halfway down. Place your hands right here at your waist, and what I want you to do is move the pedal up and down with your legs parallel and your feet in a high half toe position, and go as large as you can and just feel first if you're actually moving the pelvis, and then try to make your motion as large as you can and see where you are losing that. So one of the things that you might want to address is your client may ask you, or you may ask yourself, hey, where do I stop, right? Well, sometimes the best way to figure out where to stop is to go a little bit too far. So what you do is you bring your knees up until you feel your pelvis go out of position. Then you know that's a little bit too far. And then you know the next time you don't go quite as far. The other way to do this is perhaps, here's a little trick that I like to use. Pause for 1 second. Exactly. Then, how about this? Put your feet in a V, heels together, toes turned out. Place one hand right in front of you on your stomach and the other hand right back behind you in the small of your back. That's another way you can kinesthetically tell if your pelvis is moving. This might actually be better for you than having the hands at your hips. So try that out. I want you to press down and up. And since Natalie knows what the exercise is, Natalie, just go as much as you can without moving your pelvis. Now, note the speed at which she's moving. I know she is extraordinarily strong and extremely skilled at this exercise, and she is doing the appropriate thing here of taking this slow. She's really working on her control. Look at the level of focus she has in her eyes and in her face. That is the appropriate approach you want to take, because if you do this exercise, you could just sit here and pound away on that pedal, and that will be counterproductive. A lot of times a person will get on this chair and be thinking, wow, this is the easiest thing in the world. You just sit there and you just work the pedal up and down. Will that get some type of development in the legs? Sure, absolutely. But if you think about the thing you're trying to really do here is maintain, create, improve your pelvic stability. So if you think of it, instead of just lying back and just like if you're at a gym using a leg sled, but instead using this pedal and the chair as a tool to see how well you can keep your pelvis stable. That's what you really want to concentrate on. Now, I'm going to have Natalie pretend like we've graduated and we're going to do the next level. How about place your heels wide on the pedal? Now, I want you to know where I'm just arbitrarily choosing certain positions and certain leg work variations, just like you do various footwork variations on the reformer, in order to work our way through the philosophy of working with the chair. Now, let's just say Natalie has become an absolute pro at keeping her pelvis still. Now, I'm going to challenge her a little bit. I'm going to absolutely remove her hands from the seat area or even from her waist. So Natalie, bring your arms up in midair just like you're hugging something, and then press the pedal up and down. Okay, so what we've done is we've removed any way that she can use her arms as a feedback mechanism, whether it's holding on to the seat, so she has her postural muscles on, or whether she's using her hands at her waist or at her back in any way that you can help yourself. So therefore, Natalie is now doing this all by a feel right here in the hips. Her hands are up, they're out of the way. Now, traditionally, when you do this type of work here, Pilates teachers place you in what's called genie arm position. Now, I'm going to have Natalie do a genie arms kind of incorrectly by interlacing your arms this way. So notice how she's got this kind of interweaved, knotted position with her arms. This right here is not encouraged. This is not genie arms. Genie arms would be an overlap like so. Here's why. It's not just a stylistic thing, but because let's just say for whatever reason, maybe she's got a cramp in her hip and the pedal just surges her up. If her arms are crossed like this, in order to unwind her arms and get her hands down and grab the seat in order to save herself going back, it takes a certain amount of time. But if she has her arms like this, overlapped one on top of the other, she could instantly reach down and grab the seat really quickly. Doing this takes a little bit more time. And that little time may be what is the difference between her falling and not falling. So often when you see people doing this genie arm position, this is not what you're looking for. What you're looking for is this type of position right here. Whether the left arm or right arm is on top, the dominant arm or the non-dominant arm, that's almost irrelevant. So you'll see that some people, when they do this arm position, they'll have a tendency to do one position rather than the other. So if somebody wants to do this and you like to do this way, just let them do however they like to present their arms. So that right there is your arm positioning. However, let's just say you want to challenge yourself even further. All right, how about this? Place your hands onto the seat, move so that you have both of your toes on the bar wide, or the pedal. And among Pilates instructors, you will, because we work so much on the reformer, that little slip up you heard me do, we will often call this pedal the bar quite often. And very often we'll say something like, have a seat on the reformer, when we're thinking, oh, it really meant this, the seat of the chair instead of the reformer. Because in our minds, we're doing footwork here. So in this position, I want you to press the pedal halfway down, take your arms up into like a high ballet fifth. Now what this does is that it's even harder for her to keep her position. So now go up and down. Partially because when your arms are up, all your intercostals will have a tendency to expand. So therefore, this is a little bit harder to do. Your client, if you're watching them, you can actually even see if they're moving their arms. You'll quite often see that the upper body will reflect. The rib cage will bounce back and forth. So watch your client from the side. Make sure their neck position is pristine. And this looks wonderful. Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right, so that right there is the footwork on the chair. Now, what you will want to do is you'll want to work with different spring settings. Changing the springs will have a vastly different effect on your body. If you have the spring weight too high, I don't care how good form she has, it's just going to fling her back upwards and backwards. So therefore, you will want to choose a spring weight that's a kind of medium and then perhaps experiment and work up and down from there. So that right there is your footwork with both legs.